Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Space Snacks. My guest today is Bethany Downer, and I'm so excited to speak with you because she is part of Project PoSSUM 13, just like me, and amazing science communicator. Bethany, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted. I've been looking forward to this all week.
The First of all, let's talk to our audience a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. So I was born and raised on the island of Newfoundland in Canada. So Atlantic Canada in general is a bit more rural. So we don't have any direct access to study or work in space, but I've had a space interest inherently since a young age. So I studied here. I did geography and then went on to do my master's in space studies in France. And it's through there I got into the European Space Agency and found my niche in outreach and communications for space, because I think space is just the coolest and I want everyone else to feel the same way. And part of that, I think, is effective communication. So they know not only how reliant we are on space technology, but the amazing thing that's getting done from technology to science exploration. It's important to have people that can communicate that and bridge that to the public. So that's been the area that I find the most excitement and enjoyment. And now I get to do it every day, which is a sincere blessing.
Wow, there's so much I want to talk to you about. But first, I want to get into St. John, Newfoundland.
Yes,
A
that's
lot of
right.
people are like, "Wait, where?" They're getting out the atlas right now on the map.
That's right. Yep. It actually has a quite a unique history in terms of aviation as well. So at one time we had the largest airport in the world, which was Gander, Newfoundland, and it has become famous because this is where many planes were grounded on 9/11. And it's
Oh,
why Newfoundland is now the subject of a award-winning Broadway play called Come From Away. So I have seen it on Broadway several times. I know most Newfoundlanders have. We all cry because we're going to New York and watching a Broadway play about our people, which is amazing. Newfoundland also had a couple of emergency landing locations for the space shuttle. Because we're the furthest point on the east for all of North America, it was an effective point for stopping throughout the war, for refueling, for military bases. So there is a rich aviation history, but it's about time we get a more direct space connection too.
that's some amazing history. Some of it I didn't even know. I've always wanted to go to St. John's, and to the
Yeah.
ferry there and just the water. So, how did space come into your world growing up as a kid there?
I honestly didn't have direct connections. It was just something that I realized was an inherent fascination of mine. I often, when I speak to students, mention how if you can imagine your ruled notebook, I always use the space at the top where there was some empty space to write down at the end of the day the subjects that I was learning about in school, what interested me most. And when I'd look back through at the end of the year, I realized all of these topics that clearly piqued my interest were all somehow related to space, but at the same time, space almost encompasses everything. And as someone who doesn't like to pick one specific topic, I wanted to learn about everything. Space was a great way for me to, I guess, encapsulate that. So it was an inherent interest. Of course, all Canadians were following Chris Hadfield very closely. Um, Roberta Bondar, for example. So we had, iconic Canadians that have been in space and made a global impact, which really helped. And then once I got to meet some of these Canadian astronauts in person, that really helped solidify that this is where I wanted to be headed.
Thinking about going to school and getting your degree, geography, I got mine as in geology, very
Yep.
similar to each other. What
Yep.
made you choose geography?
Great question. So I started in engineering because I was told you're good in math and science, you want to do space stuff, engineering is where you got to go. Within 2 weeks, I knew it wasn't for me. Just wasn't interested in what I was learning, and I figured I need to find something that captures my interest more. So after taking some more general courses, the earth science and geography route is really what captured my interest most. And my undergraduate thesis ended up being in the study of animals and the interaction between humans and animals. I went to Alaska for field research, presented it in Nanyuki, Kenya. So it was nothing related to space at all, but it really taught me about scientific research and more of the different processes at play here on Earth, so that I could apply that thinking when going bigger and greater in space studies for my master's.
That is fantastic. So you're actually bi-coastal for Newfoundland and Alaska, getting
That's
both
right.
of those in there. And Alaska's
That's
just
right.
amazing. I've been there, but
Yeah.
now I got to come visit you.
The other corner. That's right.
The one of the things that when we think about exploration and the type of explorer that we are inherently, are you a moon person, Mars, ISS, or Earth globetrotter? Where would you
Great
want to
question.
explore the most? Yeah.
Great question. So I think I've become a globe trotter. A lot of my job is traveling. So 2019 was the busiest year I've had in terms of traveling. So I think globetrotter definitely comes first, but when it comes to space travel, moon absolutely is the best destination. If I had to pick one, I think it's because I really like to see that view of the Earth from that distance. It's also close enough that you could still see the Earth, so you don't feel too far. But I think there'd also be a lot of scientific interest there. As someone who's now working daily in communicating astronomy for the Hubble Space Telescope, for example, I like to think about the scientific possibilities of observing the cosmos from the moon. So I think that's why
Oh,
I'm drawn to that a little bit more.
oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Just moon stargazing. Hmm.
right.
Ah,
Yeah,
that would be so much fun. So,
right.
what kind of food? I think you're a foodie like me. So, what kind of
Very
food?
much.
What would you want to eat if you were on the moon? If you could eat anything?
Great question. Well, first of all, if we were moon gazing, I think a glass of red wine would go nice in the hand as we're moon gazing, whether it's through telescopes or just enjoying the view of the Earth or otherwise. I think a glass of red wine would go well. I'm anyone you ask, I am a pizza person. And I think that's because pizza can also be changed depending on where you go. It can be different in terms of flavor, in terms of toppings. And so, as someone who travels a lot, I always like to try local pizzas because it's always going to be delicious. So, why would you want to try something else if you know pizza's already going to be delicious?
We need to travel together. You know,
Agreed.
pizza, traveling. I am the same way. Everywhere I go around the world, I try pizza. And then I'm like you said, it's so versatile. That's one of the things that makes it great. And so one of my dreams is so I could see us on the moon, and I am making pizza because my goal is to be make pizza on the moon, having my
Amazing.
little pizzeria and serving you up a slice with your red wine,
Amazing.
stargazing because we have this beautiful dome that we're
Right.
in with open where we can see the stars. And who would you want at that table with you having that slice of pizza, and
Well,
why?
well, you first of all, because I think that we could chat for hours and hours and hours. But I like to refer to my mentors a lot because I think mentorship is a term that can be used in very different ways. There are people that I work with, such as my bosses or my superiors through work, that I look to for professional advice. But there's also those when it comes to my aspirations in space flight. Or people that I can look up to. I think of astronauts that I've had the pleasure of meeting. And Julie Payette is one of those. So I had the pleasure of meeting her when she came to St. John's, Newfoundland. For those that don't know, she's a Canadian astronaut, but she is now our Governor General of Canada, which means she represents the monarch, the Queen, for the country. So she has a very big, important role. And she recently did a tour across the country last year, and I was invited to all-female lunch with her, which was great, of all locals. And then it was the biggest honor of my life so far when she awarded me with the Sovereign's Medal in Rideau Hall in Ottawa of April of last year. So she knows all about me and Project PoSSUM. She knows I want to fly commercial within a few years. So it's been nice to chat with her both in formal and informal settings because she has achieved so much, but also been in the public eye, and maintaining that composure and patience has been something really inspiring that I strive to.
Wow, that is a fantastic story. And talking about awards and stuff, you're young. You're half my age. And you've accomplished so much already.
Thank you. That's very
Being
kind.
named Canada's top 25 under 25, top 30 under 30. I think world top 35 under, and all of these. All of the spotlight and science communication. How did you find your voice at such a young age?
Great question. So the fact I had to accept early on that it meant that there would be a public element to it, which was not something I was necessarily comfortable with. I'd done a lot of public speaking, but it's different when you're putting yourself out there as a person. And I had to accept that from the beginning and say, I'm either going to let it bother me now and stop me, or I'm just going to move past it and let it be something that I can do good for. So it took, once that was realized, it really helped. I also worked closely with the UK astronaut Tim Peake shortly after he returned while I was interning at the European Space Agency in England. And going around the country with him for his public outreach really showed me the impact you can have on people just for being you and the words that you carry. So I took that to heart. And especially since I've been doing outreach locally since starting with Project PoSSUM around Newfoundland, I've had the sincere pleasure and honor of speaking to about 10,000 students so far across the island. And I really tried to carry that in my head of the words that you have, they have impact, but also what you stand for. That I'm a young woman that wants to be the first in what I'm doing. It's terrifying for me, and even just saying that doesn't feel natural, but having to own it can mean a lot more for someone else. And so I decided to take that philosophy and to remember that in the days when it's hard. But I think that's what I try to go by when I think about what this impact can be, especially coming from where it is that I do. And we've been grown up to, feel that we don't necessarily have the same opportunities. So we really try to change that mindset from a young age by having accessible examples of those that are working in high tech, high science fields that can go and directly engage with students from a young age. So they're not in with this mindset like I had from a young age that these aspirations are unattainable.
I love that, and the message that you're sharing and your willingness to move beyond the fears and the voice inside your head. I one of the things that I suffer from is imposter syndrome, and
Yeah.
this whole idea of being smart enough, good enough,
Yep.
qualified, all of those things, even though we are, right?
Right. Yeah, it's challenging. It's like a little voice in the back of your head that you fight with all the time. And I think it's something that many of us share,
Mhm.
which is, while it's encouraging to know you're not the only one that feels that way, I feel it's also disheartening that there's so many of us, even though we are skilled, we still feel that way.
I know, and I think part of that is finding support
Yeah.
and people telling you like, "Wow, you are doing a good job," and but also combating that voice and
Right.
learning strategies to still move forward. And what I
Mhm.
love is that when you came to outreach and public speaking, you being able to, even if you're terrified, still go forward and step on that stage.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it takes a lot of getting used to, and it's something that I've grown over time. And I always joke that I'm like a sponge. In school, I always wanted to be learning more. School is my favorite. I'd be a student forever if I could. So I try to take that into my professional life too. I always want to get better as a communicator, and this is just a new way of me improving myself and learning still every day, which is a great part of being a communicator because you have to learn the new information that you're communicating and to understand it well.
yes.
um, Part of it is fun that you're creating unique and fun ways to communicate that information, but the fact that I get to learn it in the first place and always be up to date on the newest and greatest in space is a lot of fun.
So let's talk about Hubble and
Sure.
some of the things that you've done. So how long have you been working in, with the Hubble Space Telescope and outreach?
Absolutely. So, Hubble specifically, for those that may not be familiar, it is a joint mission between NASA and the European Space Agency. So, European astronomers are guaranteed at least 15% observing time through the telescope, but they're quite competitive in their proposals. So, they've been getting closer to a quarter. So, my job is to represent the European findings, the European papers, as well as some of the big ones that come out of the U.S. as well. But I look after the website called spacetoLescope.org, which is the ESA Hubble website, which has been a lot of fun. I think it's a unique area of outreach because there's a sense of awareness there already for that mission. Odds are, if you sit next to someone on the bus, they've at least heard the word Hubble and can identify it to pretty images of space. So that allows me as a communicator to focus on ways of improving the awareness as well as the understanding of not only the mission but also the images. Um, So I think that's been something that's quite special. I've been having this role now for a year, and I plan on staying with Hubble as long as I can, as long as the telescope keeps operating to the high quality that it does. Outreach specifically, it's been about 5 years since I started in various capacities, but looks like Hubble will be my primary means of focus and love for the near future.
Oh, there's so much that I want to talk to you about, but getting back to Hubble first, do you have a favorite celestial object, and is it something to do with Hubble?
All Hubble images are, of course, beautiful. I know you've got one there handy. I mean, every Hubble image that comes out is really, I mean, that's what made Hubble special, is that it's showing us what the universe looks like. And take this image, for example, the colors are just phenomenal. I could have picked 10,000 Hubble images as my favorite, but I think it's the colors that stand out here for me. Nebulas are regions of dust and gas, rather, and the beautiful colors that can come out of these regions are unlike any other. I mean, that could be a phone background, it could be wallpaper. This is why Hubble's so well known, is this the high quality, you know, of its images.
Postcards.
There it is. That's right. They're everywhere. And we have to also think about what the state of science was when Hubble launched. And two of the facts I like to remind people is that when Hubble launched in 1990, we had an estimate for the age of the universe of just 10 to 20 billion years. That was the huge range we had. We didn't know how old the universe was. That was the wide range that we had when it launched. And it's because of the telescope. This has now been refined, of course. And also keep in mind, when it launched, we only knew of the planets in our own solar system. We did not have any concrete evidence yet of a single exoplanet. So in these 30 years, and we're celebrating that big 30th anniversary this year, it's really helped us consider just how far, but how quick we've come since its launch. So I like to remind people that the telescope is more than just these pretty pictures. We're, of course, in and of itself are quite stunning.
I know. It's one of the most amazing telescopes. I actually have like a Hubble tribute on my wall there. I should have gotten it down with a stamp collection that they came out with.
Beautiful.
I know, just amazing. So when food, do you like to cook? Do you like to bake? Do you like to eat out?
All of the above. I definitely, and the weekdays, I like to enjoy cooking. So while I'm still in Europe, my partner and I, that's something that we like to prioritize, is, you know, cooking together, and that's our time together is cooking. I also enjoy going out myself and getting groceries. It's a nice me time, putting my podcast in, and I enjoy the act of grocery shopping and then making the meal. But the weekends, that's when I'll enjoy time out, whether it's with friends, with family. I enjoy finding new restaurants or finding my favorite ones to go back to. I particularly like small family restaurants here in Newfoundland. That's something that we've really been trying to prioritize while we've been in lockdown, is supporting these local businesses. And so I really like identifying those that are my favorites to go back to, or finding new ones. And I'm not picky when it comes to food. I mean, everything's just fantastic. I visited Tokyo for the first time in November, and I've been having sushi all the time ever since, trying to replicate how good that was. Always go for Italian, always go for local Newfoundland food as well, which is heavily centered around seafood. We also like to enjoy moose, for example.
Wait, what is that? I mean, say that again.
We'll have moose stew, for example.
Moose
burgers. Yeah.
And moose burgers.
That's right.
Oh, okay. And so
delicious.
Delicious. I've never had moose before. And so that seems like that would be really interesting. Which one's better, the stew or the burger?
I prefer it as stew.
Yeah.
I tell tourists to have it as burgers because it's, you know, a little more familiar. It's a lot like beef, but a little more flavorful. And it's quite special. I mean, moose are what Newfoundland is known for. They were actually introduced here on the island. So they're not native, but they completely took over. They're everywhere. You'll likely find lots of videos online of these giant animals walking through our trails. We have to watch out for them on the road all the time. So they've become part of the Newfoundland culture. So that's, of course, integrated into the hunting culture as well as the food as well.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I just want to put out a shout out to some of the people who have been tuning in. Shayla is two great people talking right here. And animal studies.
Right back at her.
And then Ron Sparkman says, I want a telescope on Europa. And he says he could listen to the two of us all day. And then Aaron Bonilla says good morning, and Tamala Daniels says good morning. So thank you,
Hi, guys.
everybody.
Thank you for joining.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you now.
Excellent. Love it.
Talk to me about swimming and the role
Excellent.
that's played in your life.
Yeah, so this is not something that's as publicly known or I talk about as much, but I did all through grade school. I was a national stream synchronized swimmer. So I actually started in diving, and it's while I was up on one of the platforms that I noticed a synchronized swimming team, and I thought, I'm in the wrong water sport. I need to change it quick. And it was something that really developed me in a lot of ways, not only physically, but through discipline, teamwork, organization. 4 mornings a week, I'd be at the pool 5:30 in the morning. So this taught me, from a young age, time management, which is essential now. I think that's really where I learned to manage my time. And not to mention the fact that a lot of astronaut training takes place underwater. So I feel my second body is underwater. I'm very natural in the water environment, which can be useful for potential spaceflight.
And I think that you've made a lot of parallels to being an astronaut, the study habits, the work habits, the things that synchronized swimming has enabled you to develop and kind of get that start. I imagine just competing in front of people versus going and now speaking and doing outreach in front of people. Different, but similar to some extent.
Yeah, you raise a good point. Synchronized swimming is exhausting, and your job is to make it look effortless and easy. It's like running a marathon, but you're holding your breath while doing it, and you're upside down, and your feet are out of the water. So while it looks graceful and beautiful, it is grueling what takes place underneath the water. So those are the type of things that you think about sometimes as a communicator, of making it look easy or explaining the concepts that might be hard in a similar way. I think it's a great parallel. It's a good point.
And it's funny, you just brought up something about doing the work that a lot of people see this very polished program, and they don't get how much work and hours go in to making it look so effortless.
It's a great point. Take a Hubble image, for example. What you're looking at, there was countless hours that went through the processing of that image, the understanding of the data so that we can interpret what it is we're looking at and why it looks that way. Take, for example, the anniversary image that we released on the 24th of April. Those observations and the teams of people that worked on it, all of the anniversary products, the mini documentaries, those started about a year ago, and it all accumulated to one day. So it's important of making that one day count and making it look effortless, when really there are teams of people who should all be recognized for the amazing work that they do to make that happen. And it's another great parallel that you bring up.
And I love that whole idea of doing the work, because a lot of times now we see people who are successful, and especially at a young age, and we think, oh, how lucky are they? But they don't realize all the work that you've done to get to the point where you are to be able to have this voice.
Right, so all the hardships, right? Sometimes people don't realize the hardships that go into it too. In order for me to have my dream job now, I was rejected probably 30 times. I started counting all of the interviews that didn't go well. There are a lot of things that go wrong in order for some things to go right. But like you said, the work that goes into it, I think, is what makes it more impactful for when it eventually does happen, or the right job comes around. So I think that's a good point you make, is that there are a lot of hard things that go into the work that it takes to get to where you want to be.
I want to bring us back to geography, travel, and food. And so now you've been starting to travel a lot, like you said. And how has traveling influenced your culinary, the way you think of food and the things you like to eat?
Great question. So part of travel, in 2019 was a bit of an outlier in terms of travel. I had over 100 flights, which will not be matched in 2020, of course. But a lot of that was for my work, but it was also related to some personal travel. If I was getting sent somewhere cool, like Hawaii a couple months ago, I said, well, I'm going to stay around for a couple of days. Or if I'm going to Tokyo, well, I'm not just going to go for the conference. I want to explore the region as well. So I really take the time, if I'm going somewhere, to learn what the place is. I don't just want to remember that conference or that meeting. I want to remember the people that I met, the food that I have, because I think food is inherently connected to culture and the people, and that's one of the ways that we can connect with them. So I always make sure I'm eating local dishes. That can include pizza if I really want to stretch it, but I really want to have local dishes. And to avoid sometimes the tourist traps, I want to have the local restaurants, the family businesses, homemade meals that can really connect me to the people and the culture of that particular region. That even started from Alaska and studying in geography. We were staying with native communities for 6 weeks of that time with only the backpacks on our back. We were hunting, we were fishing. And so there was a real connection to the land there as well. And I think I took that experience with me to think of where my food comes from when I'm traveling to different places. And I really try to keep that in mind throughout all these travels, but it just makes me want to travel even more when it is safe to do so.
Right, when it's safe again. Is there any place in particular that you want to go that's been on your travel list that you just haven't had a chance to get there yet?
So I definitely want to explore more of South America because I've never been there yet.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
had the pleasure of exploring quite far around. I've covered most continents, but that one is not one that I've reached yet.
You know, that's
And I think that the
interesting.
food will also be amazing.
Oh, I've been fortunate that I've been through a lot of South America, and there's a program that I'm going to recommend for you. It's the Astronomy in Chile Educator Ambassador Program,
Yeah.
ASA.
Yeah.
And have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Because that just going to ALMA and CTIO and some of the big observatories down there.
Yep, exactly. And I work very, very closely with the European Southern Observatory through my job. So every time I'm hearing about the science and what it's like, it just piques my interest even more. And I've heard the dark skies and the observations there is unmatched. So it's definitely on the list.
It's absolutely beautiful. And speaking of South America, some good wine, Chile, Chilean wines, Argentina. You're a wine drinker? I know that.
Yeah.
Are you a white or a red?
It depends. I enjoy both. I think I like my red wine with supper. But for more social occasions out with friends, I'll have a white. But that's
And
also a great thing to try when traveling too, is to see how they differ and how they're changed. As someone who spends a lot of time in Europe and traveling around in Europe because it's much smaller, that makes it easy. I always like to bring back a bottle from every place that I go so that I can enjoy it again later and reminisce on what the trip was like through that bottle.
Yes, definitely. Really good wine regions all throughout Europe. And so when you're at home, especially now, what are you cooking at home? What kind of dishes are you making up?
Great question. So it really depends on if I'm living in Belgium, if I'm here in Canada right now. So here I'm with my family, so we'll be cooking for 5 so that everyone's eating. We also want to prioritize that it's local businesses that we can support, but we're really trying to focus on, healthy meals here at home. Been enjoying a lot of chicken. Lots of fruit salads lately too. So it really it changes depending on the day, and because my work schedule can be hectic, sometimes it's something on the go, but when I can, I like to take the time to sit down and enjoy a good meal.
Oh, that's really great. And so thinking about family and cooking, how is your family into space? What do they think about all the things that you've been doing?
They're probably sick of me talking about space so much. My friends too are probably thinking, my God, it's all she thinks about, it's all she talks about. But nothing but from support. And the community of St. John's and Newfoundland in general has been absolutely outstanding in terms of the support they've given me since I've vocalized what it is I want to do. It's been really impressive how much they've been able, to make me feel more confident in the words that I've been putting out there. And I remember when I conducted the parabolic flight for the first time with PoSSUM in October, I carried a small box of sand with me from Newfoundland to study how the grains behaved in the microgravity environment. And the video was posted by a local news organization. And within 48 hours, it was watched over 100,000 times. It just
That's
blew up.
amazing.
Everyone wanted to see this box of sand and how it behaved in lunar and microgravity. And the way we describe is that it behaved like a flock of birds. So it was moving around the container of its own. The video's easy to find, but it was simply amazing. It blew my mind, and everyone was excited that there was a piece from home that got to fly in the microgravity environment. So we're hoping to do some follow-up studies with how the grains behave.
Okay, so funny that you said that, because independently, I was thinking about, I signed up for the microgravity challenge class this fall.
Yep.
And so and as a geologist, I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to think about? And it came to me that different densities of sand.
Yeah.
And being able, so the same exact idea. So I would love to collaborate with you on follow-up for my project.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic, because this is something we need to consider, and sand in particular has been studied very seldomly on the ISS, and it's been more than 10 years since. So there's been some studies that were primarily diluted with water, so it was wet sand, but for us, we were just looking at how the grains behaved. For example, when the Apollo astronauts landed on the moon, there was a lot more dust than they expected. Everything got dusty and dirty. These are the things we need to think about more long-term, and how grains can behave in different gravity environments.
I totally agree. And question for you, I know we're running long now, because I'm like, oh, I got to talk.
That's okay, of course.
Did you looked at different densities of sand based on, or was yours uniform?
So the sample that we took from here in Newfoundland, it was rather uniform within it, but my hypothesis suggested that when it settled, it would be by density, but it didn't appear to be that way. It looked to be quite uniform, because they were moving very independently, and it didn't matter what the density or the size of the grains were while it was, weightless. So it was a matter of when it came to fall back down.
Yes.
It all came down at once, but then it didn't settle within it, because of course we were doing lots of parabolas, but it's something we really want to look at closer and to find ways of measuring the individual grains.
That's fantastic. Oh, I'm so excited to work with you on that. I literally drew that just the other day, a box with sand, and thinking about, because graded bedding.
Yes, exactly. We got the same thinking.
And oh, yes.
I'm going to send you lots of stuff after this. Excellent.
I can't believe our time is up, and it's just been so much fun talking to you, Bethany. I am going to have to have you on again, because we could talk for a long time. I want to thank the people who have been listening in again. Aaron says, nice. I did synchro and diving as a kid too.
Amazing.
With swimming. And Madeline says, great discussion, ladies. Greetings from Australia. Woo, woo.
Fantastic.
Bethany, can you just quickly tell us how to follow you on your social media and what to look forward to in the future?
Absolutely, sure. So for those who are interested, I do a lot of science outreach on my Instagram page through the stories feature. Every day I feature a new space fact or space concept, and I explain it in very simple language for people to understand. For those who are interested, that's Bethany Downer. Also on Twitter, which is Bethany Astro, a lot of Hubble updates. And I also send updates for a website which is called spacescoop.org. And that's where we take new press releases, primarily in the domain of astronomy. And we take out all the mumbo jumbo and make it really simple language. It's meant to be for younger children, almost a translated press release, but in very simple language for younger children, so that they don't have this idea of rocket science being too hard. They have an accessible way of understanding these complex concepts. So there's a lot of updates that I have on my page that are from the Space Scoop channel as well, which is a project I'm delighted to coordinate. So those are the best two means to get in touch with me, and I'm sure we'll be in touch in the future. This has been fantastic, and I thank you for having me.
Wow, thanks everybody. And definitely Bethany, she's one to watch. So make sure you tune in.
Right back at you.
And those of you guys that have been watching, if you left a comment, again, we sent out a recipe, and today's is a seafood gumbo. So one lucky person who tuned in and wrote a comment, I will let you know tomorrow who the winner is. And so thanks, everybody. And Bethany, thank you so much.
Thanks
This
for
has been
having me.
fantastic.
Have a great day and a great long weekend.
Thank you.